Cruises. On the right cruise line, it's a gorgeous voyage to the Bahamas or the coast of Mexico. But on the wrong one, your neighbors are practicing for MMA, one guy's singing some opera after abusing his free drink package, and it's only 3 in the morning. But where did it all start? Someone had to be the absolute pioneering mad lad that made a ship just for the pleasure of enthusiastic, sunscreen-slathered tourists to send home a coconut as a postcard. For that answer, we have to go way back to around the turn of the century in 1886. A man by the name of Albert Ballin joined the Haypag as a manager of the passenger department. He enjoyed a nice quiet career up until 1891 when a thought came across his head. Hey, people aren't using ships in the winter because the transatlantic route gets rough, so these ships are just chilling in the harbor. Let's do something about that. He was able to finagle the Augusta Victoria, the company's flagship at the time that only launched a couple years prior, on a new kind of sailing, one he coined as a pleasure voyage. The 58-day sailing went from Cuxhaven, Germany, all the way to the Mediterranean and back. This wasn't too special on its own, but the fact that there were fully planned shore excursions, like the time your Uncle Brad went to St. James and got blasted at the local bar, was pretty revolutionary at the time, since going ashore in the olden days meant making your own itinerary by hand without a guide. Pretty tricky to do if you've never exactly been somewhere before. While the sailing started to catch on with holiday goers, the current ocean liners were pretty bad at these kind of quote-unquote cruises, since they were built for the express purpose of going across the Atlantic versus shoring up at sunbathed docks. Along with that purpose, they didn't have too much to entertain folks aboard, what with the class divisions and sheltering of balconies from the North Atlantic waves that were guaranteed to Charles Lindbergh your kid off the side if you weren't paying attention. So they needed a different kind of ship, one made for entertaining every single passenger, not just those with ivory-plated tickets and a Monopoly monocle. Also one that wasn't as massive as most ocean liners tended to be, since they couldn't even fit into some ports. Victor, drumroll please. In comes the Prinzessin Victoria Luise, named after the only daughter of Kaiser Wilhelm II. She was ordered in 1899 and launched in 1900, being only about a year to build an entire ship, so Disney parks could learn a thing or two if you ask me. When launched, she had some impressive stats, being 407 feet long with a top speed of 16 knots, or 19 miles per hour for my fellow hamburger men. John Malcolm Brennan, a literary critic of the 20th century, gives full credit to Ballin for the first cruise ship, regarding the real breakthrough in pleasure cruising, at least as the 20th century has come to know it, was a single-handed gesture of Albert Ballin. For passenger accommodation, she only had 120 staterooms, but every single one of them were considered first class. You had double light portholes, luggage space underneath and beside the beds, and you even had a fan inside of your room for when that Mediterranean heat starts to peek through your porthole. The cabins even had a private lounge area tucked inside, appointed with a corner couch, a table for eating and reading, as well as a writing desk for letters and traveling work. However, where this ship shined was in its glorious public spaces. Wide mahogany-laden smoking rooms, a main saloon that would make Michelin star restaurants jealous, and endearingly carved staircases aided the thought that you were staying in a luxurious hotel in a capital European city, instead of going on excursions the next day with your family after you dock in Venezuela during your 30-day cruise. They even had a gym. You probably wouldn't find a squatting rack that Ronnie Coleman could max out on, but with a neat skylight and beautiful wood furnishings, you'd feel like, again, you're just in a floating hotel, because in essence, that was the idea from the start. In a 1902 ad that I managed to find on eBay, she was advertised along her distant relative, the August Victoria, with the August being more Middle Eastern and Mediterranean oriented. Now, while I couldn't find anything on how much a cruise would set you back, I only imagine you could go on one if you had at least 2 butlers on payroll. If we're assuming the price of the cruise included your food, however, then you were fed like an absolute champ. I'm probably about to butcher this whole menu because a lot of it is in French, since the menu on this ship was actually inspired by a lot of Auguste Escoffier's recipes. Even a lot of the weirder ones, as we're about to find out. Cannelons a la Prinzessin, basically a pasta sheet filled with either fish, meat, or vegetables as your starter. Fillets of fish a la Regents, in Auguste Escoffier recipe, that included bare fillets of fish that were shallow poached in white wine, most likely a Chablis wine, and butter, served with a nice rich Normandy-style sauce, topped with fish Cullen, Basically a dumpling made from fish, butter, eggs, and heavy cream. So you basically get fish on top of fish. Back then, not a lot, if any, animals were really considered sacred or for conservation, so you could even order a thing called green turtle ragout à la Montglas, which would get you stewed green sea turtle meat in a velvety sauce. The Montglas part of the name comes from French culinary speak, meaning a specific compound mixture of finely diced foie gras, truffles, mushrooms, and pickled ox tongue. I don't know about y'all, but like I would not touch most of this menu because I'm pretty sure it would look amazing because the plating pretty much had to be perfect, but green sea turtle meat's just a little too far out of the realm. But cruise cuisine's come a long way since then, hasn't it? For comparison, on modern cruise ships like the Symphony of the Seas from Royal Caribbean, I'm comparing the main dining hall of that one with the main dining hall menu of the Prinzessin. So basically, you'd be able to get tomato soup, fried chicken, prime rib. They offer kind of like a rotating menu daily, so it's different kinds of things, but it's stuff you'd really expect from cruises, honestly. So there'd probably be, hamburgers, sausages, and of course they have the different restaurants all over the ship, but just typical American fare for the most part. The only cruise line nowadays that I would really put up to any of the older ones would be the Cunard line, because not only do they actually have a full-on history, they also absorbed the White Star Line back in the day, and they still have the only transatlantic ocean liner just anywhere. With the Prinzessin being a piece of, at the time, modern engineering, her silhouette and amenities gave off the word luxury without even saying anything. So by walking by a dock, at least you'd know you wouldn't be able to afford going on there. The bronze-painted steam funnels, twin screw propellers driving the ship along at a nice, steady, and comfortable pace, and her elegant ivory white paint job left little to the imagination when it came to elegance. For me, I just absolutely love that look where you have the white paint with the kind of bronzed funnels. Like, I don't think anything beats that on a steamship aside from the classic colors like the red, white, and black of absolute monsters like the Titanic. So, what became of this gorgeous lady? Scrapped after years and years of successful service? Transferred into a hospital ship and then blown up by a submarine? Actually, weirdly enough, captain's error happened to it. After being in service for only 6 years, on December 12, 1906, she left Hoboken in New York on the route to Kingston, Jamaica, for a nice beautiful cruise around the islands. Her captain at the time was H. Brunswig, a 38-year-old industry veteran, and had been at the Victoria Luise's helm for almost 2 years at that point. I couldn't find too much about the rest of his career, so basically a few days of open ocean travel was just going by without recall, no huge incidents or anything. Up until the moon was rising on the night of September 16th. The captain was attempting to ferry into the dock at Kingston, Jamaica, but he accidentally mistook the Plum Point Lighthouse for the Port Royal Lighthouse. Now the reason that this is important is because they had maps on board at the time, and this would be on any ship really, where it shows you the depth of any ocean or any kind of body of water that you're currently in. So if you get it wrong even by a city, then there could be a lot of stuff jutting up that you don't want coming inside of your ship. It was even worse as well, because the nautical charts actually got rendered inaccurate because of a recent volcano eruption, which altered the height of the seabed in different areas around Jamaica. At around 8:30 p.m. at that night, she'd actually run aground on a piece of uncharted reef, which is honestly a captain's worst nightmare, aside from, I don't know, maybe an iceberg, but we shouldn't have to worry about that for another 6 years. They attempted to dislodge the ship by running her engines full astern, basically trying to get Terry to put that thing in reverse, but it was no use as they realized it was soon a fruitless task. The captain sent a boat ashore to report what had happened, retired to his stateroom, and tragically self-ended right on the spot. The next day, after the passengers slept pretty unaware of the captain's demise, Third Officer Bruno Zach went ashore and coordinated a line of ships from the dock to the ship, making stepping stones for the passengers to get on land. They were basically just kind of passed in between ship from ship, making almost kind of like a cool little gangway. Almost all the hotels in Kingston actually offered free board for the survivors. In a fateful run of events after that, a German military cruiser named the SMS Bremen tried to tow the limping ship off the reef and to a dry dock to attempt repairs, but she was a little too firmly lodged on it to even budge. Even more attempts were made by various other ships from different nations Even a French training ship tried and failed. A few days later, on the 19th of December, the Victoria Luise was tragically declared a total loss. The Hamburg American line scrapped all the fittings from the wreck to either garner some more money from the loss, or to fit out other ships in need of repairs / building new ones. The following year, 1907, actually held a tribunal and found the captain to be at fault. Almost every seafarer pretty much knew it from the start, as the captain should always be the one who coordinates rescues and assists passengers in daring situations like that. But he instead did what he did, leaving a pretty big mark on his legacy. And even in that same year, your ex went swimming and caused an underwater earthquake, which was enough to dislodge the ship, but that meant the hull was now wide open to the sea, and she was lost fully to the waves. A ship by the name of Prinzessin Cecil, launched in 1905 and being the ship for the Hamburg Americans line between Hamburg, Germany and Mexico. After the accident, she was placed on the Victoria Luise's route so that a ship could still run from Hoboken to the islands. In 1910, however, the company's passenger liner Deutschland was renamed to Victoria Luise and refitted into a cruise ship to keep the class going. Tragedy always seems to strike when human innovation comes into play, and that's tragically no different with this industry-changing ship. She'd been a fan favorite of not just the line, but the seafaring community as a whole, and especially from other ships passing by with their vertical, unraked stems. The stem being the front part of the ship, with the Victoria Luise, of course, having a nice raked stem, and ocean liners of the day, similar to the Titanic and Britannic, having just straight down verticals. What's your take on this gorgeous vessel? Would you have loved to sail on her in a heyday? I know I would have counted myself extremely lucky to be aboard this marvel of a ship. This has been Captain Ark. I have new videos coming every Tuesday. Thank you so much for sticking around. Never let them dim your brightness.